Hello and welcome to PMI's Leading for Business Excellence podcast. I'm Susannah Clarke, Managing Partner of PMI, the performance improvement, consulting, training and apprenticeship firm. This podcast brings inspiring stories from across the globe and a multitude of different sectors. We talk with great leaders who share their experience and what business excellence means to them. So, welcome. Strange for me having my business partners, my partners in improvement together today, but lovely to have you. So today we've got Kate Smith, Rebecca Seddon, Rich Seddon. Thank you for coming. We're going to talk today about the future, but I'd like to talk a little bit about the last year that we've had in particular and some of the learnings and celebrations, most importantly, and get some of your reflections just to kick us off. So we've been 40 years old this year, which has been a huge celebration.
The organisation, that is, not us individually. Yes.
Although, frankly, personally, I wouldn't mind going back. Yes, I had 40 every year, thank you. That was a good year for me. The organisation, PMI, has been 40 years old this year. We've had our first Goals to Results conference in September. And at the weekend, we celebrated 1 year of our integration with Capella, bringing apprenticeships into our consulting, coaching, training and apprenticeship services. So it's been quite a year. I'd like to throw open to the table initially to you guys and say, what do you look back on and particularly celebrate, and what do you notice from the year that we've had?
Kate, I think you should kick this one off as the newest joiner of the team.
Yeah, and this is my first experience of being together, having this kind of conversation. We have lots of conversations as a team, but great to be involved today. My biggest and proudest kind of thought relates to the integration of the team. So we've brought together two separate groups of people who didn't know each other at all 18 months ago, and those teams have come together in a really positive way, with lots of question, lots of challenge, some sticky, tricky moments that we've worked through together, and I feel hugely proud of what the team has achieved and the way that we've come together, and we've got such a bright future ahead.
Do you know what I noticed about that was it was like people from the two different organisations looked at each other and go, I really recognise you, because they, at their heart, they were the same type of people. They had the same values and so on. I think that made it was a really lovely moment to watch that. Yeah, indeed. In the people.
And it was surprisingly easy when we came to integrating the values. When we put the two sets of words next to each other, the previous PMI ones and the previous Capella ones, and there was so much alignment in that. It was an easy job, which was, I think we hoped for that. We've done a lot of work in terms of due diligence and preparation to get to that point, to make the right decisions for the two separate businesses. So it was an absolute joy to pull that together and to see the ease of that integration. And you're right, at that very deep personal level, to have that connection was really special and has provided such a strong foundation for the last 12 months and for many years to come.
Thank you. Thanks.
I think what I've been really delighted by in this year has been the clients who we've worked with for a long time coming back and saying, congratulations, goodness, you and expressing their thanks and their learning journeys that they've had with us, and how fulfilling that is for all of us to have supported people in that. The eureka moments right through to the major transformations that people have done and where they've gone on and what they've gone on to do with their careers, because over 40 years that's a lot of people who've been through working with us. And so some of those stories have been really lovely to hear as well, and how many old process manager books people pulled out and said, I've still got this from 30 years ago, which is nice. So that's been lovely. And I think it also sort of affirming how some of the core principles, which were, of course, at the heart of PMI, but also we found at Capella as well, about, you know, understanding the work that you do, understanding what the customer needs. You know, those things sound a little old hat, but actually that's the foundations of how you make good business. And we've been able to layer on top of that, and we are doing now, all the you know, as new technologies and new approaches come along, we can put that together and compound that into a great set of useful principles that people can use in their business and even in their everyday life. So yes, that's been one of the highlights of this year, is reflecting on that.
And I noticed at Goals Results as well, clients who've been with us for a long time and they were at Goals Results, but they got to meet that wider organisation, because often they only meet a subset, don't they? You know, they have 2 or 3 consultants who come in, they work very closely with one of the managing partners, but they don't necessarily get to meet all of us and all of the consultants and see them. And so it was really interesting. They enjoyed getting that perspective, and I got a lot of feedback to that.
Certainly.
Yeah, that's true. So for me, it's been a year of dual anniversaries. It's 40th anniversary of the founding of the company, but it's also my 20th anniversary this year as well. I've been with the business, so I've been here 50% of the time, and you know, I'm a big one for anniversaries as a reflection opportunity. And I think it's really interesting to look back on the things that have changed and the things that haven't changed, and some of those are surprising. So the world of work in those 40 years and the 20 years that I've been around is quite radically different. If 20 years ago we could have had anyone could have conceptualized that you could generate the kind of things, semi-original thought that AI is enabling us to do now, there was no way of reconciling that. And I remember one of my first missions of being appointed operations manager was to get rid of fax machines in this business. and we were ahead of the curve doing that 20 years ago and killing off the fax machine.
And yes, I was asked for a fax machine yesterday from the US. So.
Yeah, indeed. And yes, there's still use exists. So that kind of stuff, and particularly the way day-to-day work and the opportunities we've enabled for people to add value to their day-to-day work. I think that's kind of one of the big reflections I've got, particularly as how closely I've managed different teams over that period. Thinking specifically about your question about this year, for me it comes to strategy and strategy execution. We've got a long-established means of developing and deploying our business plan and strategy, and we have constantly tried to improve that, sometimes with success, sometimes with abject failure, frankly. And it's really tempting to reinvent all the time. And this year I think we've done a really good job of kind of high-level refinement without total reinvention, really focusing in on the things that have worked and understanding why they've worked and trying to do more of that and replicate that. And the real transformation in this business started 5 years ago during the COVID pandemic, as it did for many. But we've turned this business into something very different in that time period. And this year's felt like a real maturity and coming of age for us, which is ironic given the business for a mid-sized consultancy at 40, it's a fairly rare thing. A lot don't make it this far. Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm very acutely aware of the things that have made that successful. And then I guess there's a very personal thing I thought, looking back in preparation for this question, which is my job title changing last year to CEO when we acquired Capella. I have an overall reflection of disappointment and surprise in the change in people's behaviour towards me since that job title changed. Because my role didn't change that much, but my job title changed. I found suppliers particularly talk to me in the room.
Right.
And I'm very conscious as a privileged white male that there's all kinds of biases potentially going on there. But it really did seem to switch. And the only thing I can think is different is that job title.
Yeah.
And that, I try to be conscious of that. And I try to sit back from discussions. And it really opened another world to me of kind of, does this happen all the time? And it's been intriguing, that has. And particularly as those of you joining us on the podcast will realise, I'm in the minority here.
I was going to say, obviously, the fairer amongst us now use that job title as well, as and when we need to.
And the gender balance in this business and the ethnicity balance in this business is pretty reflective of society. In fact, the gender balance in our leadership team is not, because as you can see. So I'm the only male on the directors team, and I think that whole thing of how people perceive that and being able to consciously look at what's happening in situations, I feel personally I've got better at that this year, and trying to be aware of it and critically with a bigger organisation that we now have, recognising that if everything comes to me, I'm the single point of failure.
Yeah.
And particularly how these conversations and decisions are made, it needs the power that we absolutely were determined to seize post-COVID was the power of the team.
Mm-hmm.
Devolved decision-making, clear measures, and we've made some really good headway. But I've got this sense of positive dissatisfaction with where we are. There's loads more to do. And the day that runs out is the day I will also run out, I think.
Well, and also, frankly, we're in the world of evolution, though, aren't we? That sounds trite. What I mean by that is, improvement is forever, is ongoing, because we have to, not only us, but our clients have to improve to keep pace with change, don't we? So, good news, you don't have to run out the door. Things will keep changing.
There's more to do.
There's definitely more to do. So, let's talk about the future. We wanted to talk around, three key areas that we hear a lot about from our clients, that we see a lot in research papers, which are productivity, the challenge of productivity, digital transformation, and sustainability. So those are the three topics I want to anchor the rest of our conversation around. And Rich, can I start with you on the productivity challenge? And I think everyone understands it's important to be productive, but I think it's around the role of improvement within productivity in order to keep up with the challenges that we see.
So, great intro, because I don't agree. I don't think everyone does understand what we mean by productivity and why it's important. And why do I say that? There's so many different dimensions to look at this from. So, everyone will be familiar with economic forecasts, the summary of the West, that we lack productivity. You're hearing a lot of stuff about the challenges in France this at the moment, politically, but driven by what is perceived to be an economic productivity problem. The fact is, old economic models are probably not fit for measuring human society and economic activity today. So what do we know? We know that in many developed nations, birth rates are falling. We know we've got differing attitudes in progressive generations to work-life balance. We know we've got divisions in societies around the gap between those that have and those that haven't is ever increasing. And it's really important to think about those challenges and not ignore them as an inconvenience if you do anything about productivity. And frankly, there's hardly a government, if any government on the planet, that is really seizing this with some of the big questions that they need to answer. They're very uncomfortable about it. There's, in recent years, a move towards, generally speaking, an anti-immigration sentiment, without much thought to the implications of that. So if we take that as accepted, that's generally the tone, everyone's got a general feel for what these things are. What do we mean by productivity? And fundamentally, it's about ensuring that the societies we've built, these complex, expensive societies that we've built, can continue to be economically productive enough to support the lifestyles to which we've become accustomed. And you can put that, just to give a few random examples, how we look after our old people, how we look after our, how the health services function in our societies, how safe our roads are, how safe our rail network is, the timeliness of our trains. All of those things cost money, and fundamentally, if the society isn't functioning and can't generate enough resources to support it, then we've got a major problem. And we have a major problem. So we have to get more out of less, whilst recognising, and by less we include everything, including natural resources. Because let's face it, this planet ain't going to put up with the current behaviour that we've exhibited over the last 250 years, certainly.
Indeed.
So, if you take that for given, as a kind of concept and accepting of the concept, what do you do? What's the role of improvement in it? It's about ensuring we maximise the value of the inputs whilst enabling society to continue to grow. We're facing a first challenge since post-Second World War at the moment of living standards not improving year on year and decade on decade. The electorates around the world are not going to put up with that, and therefore improvement and the reduction of the use of resources, the increasing value add that humans have, is going to be critically important. And we're going to talk about technology later on, so I won't talk about some of the enablers of that. But I think that's, in terms of a setting of the scene, these issues are big, they're interconnected, and what does it mean right down at the individual organisation level? It's recognising that throwing more people doing non-value added jobs at a problem is no longer an option. And
Bex, out of interest, in the clients that you're working, how well recognised is what Rich has described, would you say?
I would say, in terms of recognition of the symptoms that you see, definitely.
Yeah.
So you'd see we can't get enough people with the right skill set comment. We can't get enough product service out the door. Our capacity is restrained.
The demands of our customers are going up.
And the demands are going up. So it's not good enough to have my parcel delivered in 3 days' time. I want it today. And so the symptoms and the effect, therefore, that has on their financial results is evident. Is that recognised to how that fits society? I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask them. But there's one factor in all of this around the collaboration of humans and the ability for us to work as a system in order to get the results. And that's where I think one of the keys of unlocking sits, because you can do more on one bit of a process, but unless you're optimizing the whole system in which that sits, it alone isn't going to work. So, as Rich said, they've got this great big society problem. We've got to, as individual businesses, individual governments, work together to how we've solved that as a whole, not little piece and little piece and little piece. Well, yes, little piece will make a little difference, but the big differences that we need, that only comes with that cross systemization of what we're doing. Be that, the energy system utilities is a good example of that at the minute. Where is the power coming from? What are we using for? How are we wasting it? How are we storing it? How do our devices that we're used to every day work on that? Where do they go afterwards? Where's the disposal? That's a real good example of a system which a lot of people are working on, but is it really visible? And applications of that into everything, be it water, be it materials, be it people. Because at the heart of this productivity thing, it's a people thing, isn't it?
Yes.
We have less babies being born. We have more people living longer who aren't necessarily or aren't accepted to necessarily work. So where do we get the human power, the human brain power from? And again, I know we're going to talk about technology later, which can be, again, another one of those keys.
I was having an interesting conversation yesterday with a client where we also were trying to elevate the perception from a regular sort of title of a process to the purpose of the process, not just being to do that thing, but to maximise the generation of energy, etc., etc., etc. And that was quite a shift in thinking for them, because they hadn't seen it from the ambition side.
The why.
Yes. Well, they understood it was about generating power, to use your example earlier. But actually, it's not just that, is it? It's about maximising the opportunity to generate power in when the wind's blowing, sort of thing. And it causes you to think a different way when you're designing for that ambition.
Yeah, and it's a fine balance as well that that can be relatable and meaningful.
Yes.
Rather than some kind of highfalutin, unrelatable objective to the people that are working in the process. And sometimes I think organisations that I've worked with have fallen victim to that a set of kind of purposes at that level are dreamt up in a project room where they're kind of shooting for the stars without checking, is that relatable?
Yeah.
Shooting for the stars is absolutely fine and it's part of human endeavour, but how relatable is that to the people that are going to make the difference? Because the power is not in the decision makers' hands, it's in the people that execute the processes every day.
Indeed. We've touched on early thoughts around we're going to talk about digital transformation, we're going to talk about automation. So is this a good point to move into that?
Well.
And Kate, I welcome your views on what we can do to enable the potential for digital transformation, automation, AI.
It's a good question. I'd like to start by kind of stepping back a little bit from that. For me, there's a huge risk with the concept of digital transformation. You can pretty much guarantee that will be on the agenda, will be on the strategy for every organisation in this country and probably globally. We want digital transformation, number one strategic priority. What does that mean? And I think there's a real risk in striving for something without truly understanding what and why, back to the purpose, that says if we don't deeply understand our processes and make sure that they are purposeful, that they are efficient and effective, we're in massive danger of looking for a solution to a problem that maybe doesn't exist, just layering solutions onto something that's broken or not working very well. And I think for me, digital transformation is a fantastic opportunity. We've done some wonderful things within the business, and to support the integration of Capella into PMI, and I've been really excited by that and excited about more to come. But that's been done in a way where we've started by understanding the processes and getting the processes to work effectively as they are today, and then digitising, not just throwing digitisation at something that's not working, because that's just a recipe, in my mind, a recipe for disaster, throwing good money after bad.
It also has been a bit of an epiphany for everybody working in the process. The fact that they've had to go through that, get involved in defining exactly how they work.
Yeah.
A bit currently how they could better work and so on, has been a huge learning, which means that when this is automated, they've got so much knowledge.
Yeah, and got a much better chance of that digitisation being effective, of genuinely making a difference, and not just masking or covering up things that are not productive.
Yes.
And I think just building on that, one of the risks that Kate talks about there is I've had 3 client conversations in the past kind of 6 weeks or so, specifically around the risk of the system functionality in some of these digital technologies driving the process rather than the process driving the transformation. And I've lost count of how many of our clients over the years have had implementations of various technologies where the OEM has pushed the capabilities of the technology regardless of process. I think Kate hits the nail on the head with with the risk of not understanding your processes first in that, and really understand, because it's inconvenient. Let's face it. Who wants to do it? It is difficult sometimes to make that kind of case to the business that you will genuinely be better equipped to grapple this stuff if you understand the current state, you understand why the current state is how it is and how it's performing, rather than it's just awful and we need to get rid of it. And that's a key take. Can I just ask you, Kate, a question as well, please? I'm really interested in the role of skills in this. So from your perspective, both from the technology side and the productivity side, we didn't talk about skills at that point. What's your take on that?
for me, learning, the building of knowledge, capability and confidence are absolutely critical to deliver productivity and transformation, digital transformation, or any transformation. Without that building of capability and confidence, we've got no chance of moving forwards and making the gains that we know are absolutely critical. I was thinking about one of the presenters that we invited to join the Goals to Results conference, one of our level 6 improvement specialist apprentices, who is now leading continuous improvement for NHS Hospitals Leicestershire, and he led a project in the cardiology unit, and the one of the aims was digital transformation, and he said, let's get the process right first.
Yeah.
Then we'll layer the digital transformation on top of that. And the savings that were made, cross-functional team, a lot of hard work, mapping processes, understanding the customer journey, the patient journey, understanding how the data and the supporting processes were working. And in the trial period, they were making savings of 40 to 50%. And
and they hadn't even started with the digital yet.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Which meant that when they get to the point of digital transformation, they're then able to do that in a controlled, manageable, sustainable way, and the productivity gains as a result of the improvement in the process, and then the layering of the digital transformation then truly becomes transformational. But started with the building of the knowledge and the skills and the confidence to be able to do that, and taking others on that journey. So not just one person, but taking on others on that journey as well. It was a wonderful example, and it was great to to share that at the conference with a wider group of people.
Yes.
Great point. Yeah.
Well, we had a meeting last week, and I had a second meeting last week where, in both cases, actually one of the asks of the client we were working with was that they were struggling to understand even how they were going to use the technology available, because that it's been made available a bit like we've changed the world of, we used to go on Excel training or Word training, didn't we? And we don't need to do that anymore. People have it, you just use it, and that there's a risk that digital AI, etc., is being rolled out in the same way. It's being made available, and yet when you're working in work, you don't necessarily understand what the potential of that is even.
Yeah, it's very true. And you great link there. It took me a moment to realise which conversation we're talking about. You're absolutely right. Just chucking this stuff at people without recognising the skills and capability is a total waste of money and a total waste of time. And we've got to remember the environmental impact of some of these technologies. AI is wildly resource intensive. It's going to put pressure on all of our electricity grids and the means by which we generate power. And what people often don't realise is water as well. The water consumption is vast. And some of these things are being built in desert areas where fundamentally the ecology of that area is going to be changed by them. And I kind of look at it and go, have we learned nothing?
Nothing, no, exactly.
So yes, I'm really excited about a lot of the technology, and we're embracing it ourselves as an organisation, as are several of our clients. But we've also got a responsibility to think about this stuff. And I won't quote the stat because I haven't got it accurately to hand, but the AI image generation, there are stats out there for the power consumption and the water consumption for each one of those you generate. Today, look at this setup here. We've got 2 cameras running here with 2 sets of data storage that's been created. That is having an environmental impact right now, storing both those data sets. How often do we take multiple photos on our phones of the same thing and never go back and delete them?
I know.
And by what means? And this is a known problem, and a part of these solutions are in the hands of the technology providers. They have, and some of them are doing a really good job, but some of them, I think the nature of the regulatory environment is shifting, and these corporations need to recognise it, and we as users need to recognise that in our process design we've got a responsibility to minimise that stuff, because the marginal gains on sustainability matter.
Nice segue. You and I could have planned this, couldn't we? Because the third thing I want to talk about is sustainability, and again, the role that and responsibilities I think that we have in that area. You've had a go. Bex, can I come to you on this?
Yes. See, going back to the wider point of the challenges that we're facing, the sustainability piece is just the side of the coin about how do we do more with less, and less is also less impact on the environment, so that we can continue into the future, because and survive, because it's this isn't, frankly, we could all disappear, the world over its billions of years would go, oh, that was a little blip, right, let's start again and carry on, and something else would evolve and whatever, but we won't be around to see it. So this isn't about the snow leopards in Nepal, or it's actually about humans and our survival and our richness and our richness of life and the environment around us, as well as being pictorial. Because I said, I'm a firm believer that, as I said, we could all disappear ourselves very quickly and the world wouldn't give a monkeys. It would all come back and we'd have be a new planet.
And if just on that point before you move on, Beck, I'll put a plug in here for something I'm watching at the moment, which is it's available on BBC iPlayer, is Chris Packham's Earth. Anyone that hasn't watched it and wants to understand the context, so it's not a nature programme, it's about the history of the Earth from geology, environmentally, etc. If you ever want to build on the point, I understand the point Beck's just made, truly, that's where to start. It is fantastic, it's amazing, enlightening series.
Yeah. So, building on that, it's for us, from a sustainability point of view, it's being able to maintain or increase the lifestyles, the richness of life to everybody, and that's expanding as well. So the sustainability piece, that's why improvement is so critical to that, because you're trying to think of something in the round. Again, going back to that system idea, it's not just can we do that quicker, it's what does it affect everything else? What is the consequence of it? What is the downstream effect? Yes, we have a customer, of course, that we're trying to satisfy, but it isn't just the person who's consuming that service. It's actually a customer of wider society, wider environment, etc. So, I mean, Richie's conversation about about water and electricity uses, we don't see it. It's not here. I mean, the storage for those isn't in this room. It's somewhere else.
Yeah. No, and when you're being charged 75 pence a month to store your photos, it has no personal impact, does it?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah. But in fact, why wouldn't you double it?
Yeah, quite. Exactly.
Yeah.
But going back to what can improvement people and people who looking at improvement of a wider business can do, is to consider that in the work they do when new stuff is created, when old stuff is removed. What are the consequences of it? And some of the tools and principles on which we're based absolutely lend itself to that. The system I've spoken about, the variation in things. So how do you limit that waste at either side of what you're trying to do? And then the other key piece of that is people and learning, and how they have the appetite and the aptitude to be able to evaluate what they're doing. I mean, sure, you've got a system set up to allow them to do it, but simply they need the skills to be able to do it. You need to be able to look at something and think, what are the consequences? What next? What are the tools that I can use to help me see that and collaborate with somebody else in order to get a good answer out and to therefore take a good action? So.
And bringing all of those things together that you just talked about there means that we've got a chance of improving sustainability in a sustainable way.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise we run the risk of, grabbing some low-hanging fruit and feeling all very pleased with ourselves, but actually we've caused problems downstream and it's not really made a sustainable difference to our sustainability, and that systematic approach to improvement for the system and the way in which we do it is absolutely critical.
And I think some design principles and rigorous application of good design in both process and product has a lot to play in here, a lot of responsibility to play. And you've just made me think there, Kate, and Beck, with your kind of comments about the system and the unintended consequences. A personal pet thing I've got at the moment is looking at some of the recycling schemes that many of the big, particularly consumer groups, are selling as a positive attribute within their products. And when you really poke and prod about it, it's evident that it hasn't gone back into the design process. By what means has that feature got in there that it needs recycling in the first place?
Yeah.
And one of the best examples I know currently of corporations that are genuinely doing stuff about this is Apple. Apple are genuinely, they don't do anywhere near enough for their profitability, don't get me wrong, but in terms of thinking about the design process of eliminating unnecessary materials and the commitment to recyclability of components and reuse of components, it's very interesting. They're doing it from a design point, right from not how do we recycle it, but why is it there in the first place?
Yeah.
But it is really interesting to think, why is that there in the first place?
How often do you still see the sense that sustainability is a cost to an organisation that they're just not in a position to take on because of funds available and so on?
Endlessly. And a lot of it is driven by market pressures. The relentless pursuit of growth. But if we go right back to my comment about the societal setting of productivity, we've got to look at what society wants and really understand what society wants in terms of better work-life balance, higher value added input into your work. And I don't think they get it at all. And one of the examples you can see all the time is energy density of consumer products going up. Of consumer food food products. They're going up and up and up and up and up with no thought to the consequence of that, because it's a purely sales driven event. And without wanting to be too dramatic this morning, fundamentally that's a system that's killing its customers.
Yes.
And if ever you're looking for an example of short-sightedness, that's it right there. But how does any one organisation make a difference to that is the challenge, I think. And fundamentally it comes about consumer pressure will do far more than governments will. Than governments can, because no one wants governments meddling in their business. And it's a really intriguing dichotomy that breakfast cereals, an amazing example of that. It's a purely sales-led innovation, and the innovation, and I won't mention the brand names, but I was recently in a store and I spent a good hour looking at all the different proliferation of breakfast cereals, and mostly aimed at children. So literally, it's not just their current consumers; it's their future consumers, and that's intriguing and depressing in equal measure. I was thinking the other day here in our training centre in Meriden, if we as an organisation are genuinely concerned about our positive impact, which is up here, what are we doing serving meat in our lunches? Is that necessary for a lunch? I mean, this is a question mark, not a statement. It made me wonder. The CO2 input of meat is higher. And this is a fragment, tiny little bit of difference. But this kind of thing is where it comes from. And it made me wonder, and you do have to self-examine with that stuff. Is that resource really necessary to consume in terms of the operation of our business? And many, the hands, coming back to the improvement practitioner, this change is in the hands of the improvement practitioner.
Yes.
To engineer this unnecessary waste out of our processes.
Yeah.
It's me attempting to come back to subject there, Susan.
No, it's good.
I think there's a real danger with sustainability, a bit like I was saying earlier with the digital transformation agenda, to kind of get hooked on, we need solar panels and heat exchangers, and we haven't got the money to invest in all of that or whatever. But actually, fundamentally, sustainability is about getting more value out of the inputs that we currently
Indeed.
have.
Yes.
And lots and lots of small changes are as powerful, if not more so, than the, you know, we put a solar panel on the roof, and those, you know, the kind of, what if everybody did one tiny thing, the combined effect and the system effect on that would be so much more powerful and sustainable.
Yes.
Indeed, and I think where this is really useful to persuade decision makers is when you couple sustainability with resilience. That sustainability increases your business's resilience, and therefore it supports this economic point of how do we reconcile that with the endless need for growth. In order for you to be resilient in the future, you need to operate sustainably. Well, what does that mean? It's about resilience, and it's this loop that's really interesting, and that's climate resilience, societal resilience, risk assessment, all of that kind of stuff. But how robust and resilient can we make this? And sustainability, if you think about that, and you think about actually having a chance of sustaining your ability to earn income, then it comes down to resilience and that loop. You really have to question the marginal gains, the designing out waste in processes, because we're not going to be here otherwise. And these are big questions, but it does come down to the small things.
Well, and even if we are here, we're quite miserable while we're not. We're getting to that point.
Yes.
Exactly. And we don't want that, do we? Nobody wants that future for anybody.
Well, determined not to finish on a sour note, which is, you know, looking at the worst. Yes, indeed. But the point is that there is opportunity here to make the change, but it sits within us as individuals and within us understanding our systems.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Suze, and there's a huge amount to be positive about. And if anything, the thing I'd encourage people to do is that phrase I used earlier on, is consider that, the positive dissatisfaction. Because if you beat yourself up and become too negative about it, all these problems are just that. They're massive problems rather than challenges that can be met.
Yeah.
And some of them are huge, and they're not straightforward to solve. I was very mindful of... I was mindful last week when I was listening to Andrew Marr, the former, now the editor of the New Statesman and the former BBC political editor. He's a historian, fundamentally, and one of the most accomplished historians around. And he said something very interesting to me at the end of a speech I listened to last week, which was... try and be aware that the context in which you're operating right now will always feel like the most dramatic and serious and pressing to you at the time. And being Andrew Marr, he'd researched an article from the Times from 1860, I think it was, from the street on which we were on a meeting in, which was decrying the situation that the newly empowered working class would be coming for everyone in Kensington and Chelsea, and the streets would no longer be possible to walk. And that, we smile about it now, but that felt real to the author of that article right then. And I think you can relate that. That's not me trying to belittle today's issues and problems, but it is this, if you think about the positive, the positive tension, the positive dissatisfaction, we can do stuff about this. And right back to productivity, fundamentally it comes back to the improvement practitioner, that this change is in the hands of the improvement practitioner.
Yeah, it's in our control.
Yeah.
We can do something about it.
Yeah.
We have that choice. We have the opportunity to learn. We're well equipped to learn, and we know so much more now than we did in 1860.
Yes.
We've got so much more capability to draw upon, to build upon, and grasping hold of that and feeling positive about what the potential is and what we can achieve, I think is really important.
At the root of that, though, you just mentioned learn again. It's learning how to learn. It's one of the things where it's not just learning that thing. It's knowing how to do that, to examine it. I mean, that's at the root of Plan, Do, Study, Act. Is what's your theory? What have you seen? What change I made? So therefore, what have I learned? And how is that then moved on to the next circumstance? And actually learning how to do that learning is so essential, so that we don't keep forgetting things.
Yes.
You know, isn't it the old saying of nothing new under the sun? Well, it's true, but because we forgot it, because we didn't work on how to embed that learning across the organisation.
We want to go beyond because we forgot, it's because we didn't try and learn about it.
We didn't try and learn about it in the first place. We didn't actually learn. We just did something, and we did something else, and something happened. You know, it's taken that out of it being literally a pure evolutionary system that some things survive and some things don't, to actually again taking that power back to saying, well, actually we can choose the path and we can work on the path, but that comes back to learning and of course educating the people in the organisations to have that in everything they do at all levels.
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to finish. That's our aspiration for all. So thank you.
Learning.
It's been great having this opportunity to have you all as my guests.
Thoroughly enjoy it. Hope you guessed so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Very good. Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to this Leading for Business Excellence episode. If it's inspired you to think about the challenges your leadership team or exec face and how they respond, do get in touch via team@pmi.co.uk. Or, of course, have a look at our website, which contains a wealth of information and our leadership development programme. I'd love to hear from you, so please do get in touch.